The great fundamental principle of the abolitionists is that man cannot rightfully hold his fellow man as property. Every slaveholder is a man-stealer. Angelina Grimke.
I ask no favors for my sex. All I ask of our brethren is that they take their feet from off our necks and permit us to stand upright on that ground which God designed us to occupy. Sarah Grimke.
It is the beginning of the 19th century. Charleston, South Carolina, is a beautiful, prosperous port city. Its economy, based on rice and cotton, is sustained by African slave labor. And yet, it is the birthplace of two of the 19th century's most courageous reformers, the first women from a slaveholding family to speak out against slavery, the first female agents of the American Anti-Slavery Society, the first abolitionist women to publicly defend women's own rights, Sarah and Angelina Grimke. They live at 321 East Bay Street in the cream of Charleston society. Their father is John Faucherode Grimke, a state Supreme Court judge and a wealthy planter, one of South Carolina's ruling elite. Mary Smith Grimke, mother of the 14 Grimke children, is from one of Charleston's oldest and most respected families. Antebellum, South Carolina is a carefully ordered world where blacks and women know their place. Yet Sarah and Angelina Grimke will become major players in the struggle to abolish slavery and establish rights for women. Born in 1792, 13 years before Angelina, Sarah Grimke early on displays a rebellious streak.
I took an almost malicious satisfaction in teaching my little waiting maid to read at night. With the spelling book under our eyes, we defied the laws of South Carolina.
At the beginning of the 19th century, the education of slaves is forbidden throughout the South. The education of women is severely circumscribed by custom. Judge Grimke lets Sarah study with her brothers until she is 16. But when she wants to join them at law school, he tells her that she has studied enough and that it is time for her to become a part of Charleston's social world.
Often have I returned home, sick of the frivolous beings I have been with. Night after night, my soul has been disturbed by the query, where are the talents committed to thy charge?
Her short period of leading the life of a Southern belle was a total failure. She hated it. It is no accident that very shortly thereafter, she fell under the influence of a visiting evangelical minister and had a very important religious experience which convinced her that the life she was leading was a sinful life and that she had to dedicate herself to more serious religious pursuits. And that effectively removed her from the marriage market. And I think the two are connected. She really must have rebelled against gender definition very, very early.
Like many Southerners, Sarah cannot ignore another awful reality.
As I was traveling in the low country in South Carolina, my attention was suddenly arrested by an exclamation of horror from the coachman who called out, "Look there, Miss Sarah." I looked in the direction he pointed and saw a human head stuck on a high pole. A runaway slave who was outlawed had been shot there, his head severed from his body and put upon the public highway as a terror to deter other slaves from running away.
In 1818, when Sarah is 26, her father grows ill and takes her with him to Philadelphia in search of a cure. There, she meets the people who will change her life.
The Quakers had been the group in the United States that had first protested slavery. That goes back to 1688, and had worked very hard to get rid of slavery. First, they tried to get rid of slavery within their own ranks, because when they first came to this country, they didn't feel that there was anything particularly wrong about keeping slaves. But as early as 1688, they began to think that it was wrong. And for almost 100 years, they debated whether or not it was all right for some members to keep slaves. And finally, the year of the Revolution, 1776, the Quakers decided that they couldn't have slaves any longer, and that anyone who had a slave would be disowned.
Judge Grimke dies in Philadelphia, and Sarah buries him there. When she returns south, she finds slavery even harder to tolerate and becomes more and more isolated from her family and friends. On May 15, 1821, Sarah Grimke, 28 years old, leaves Charleston for Philadelphia. Though she will return for short visits, she will make the North her home.
She had dreams or visions that told her that she was commanded to go north. Supernatural figures appeared to her, ordering her to go north and take this burden upon her. And that had a great deal of impact, not only on her, but I think it was in fact the only thing that could have convinced her family to let her go. Because for a single woman to leave her family and go to an urban center in the North was a scandalous and terrible thing to do.
In Philadelphia, she joins the Arch Street Meeting, the conservative sect of Quakers.
I have changed my dress for the more plain one of the Quakers. It was accompanied by a feeling of much peace.
Within a year of Sarah's departure, a major slave rebellion takes place in South Carolina. Denmark Vesey, a free Charleston black, organizes an attack on whites. The uprising fails, but it strikes terror in the hearts of the outnumbered slaveholders. Across the South, lawmakers tighten restrictions on blacks. Angelina is now a young woman. She corresponds regularly with her sister in Philadelphia and is deeply influenced by her.
I must speak of what my own eyes have seen.
Angelina grew up in a world in which she assumed that whatever she wanted she could have, and whatever she pursued she would succeed in. And part of this was certainly that due to the fact that Sarah removed obstacles from her path, which Sarah herself had to conquer.